Welcome. Right away we're coming up to some Civil War artifacts. Let's check them out. First up, a snare drum from 1865 used by Frank G. Campbell of the 17th Michigan Volunteer Infantry. It's beautifully painted. A pocket watch used by Sergeant James C. Breadwell of the 2nd Ohio Volunteer Infantry from 1861 to 1864. There's some 1863 Civil War tokens. A Union enlisted man's cap from 1861, a handwritten poem from 1863 from a Union soldier to his aunt in Washington County, Oregon, and a photograph of a Union Army soldier during the Civil War. Alright, in an earlier video I took you to Ford's Theater, where John Wilkes Booth assassinated Abraham Lincoln in Washington, D.C. If you've ever wondered where the chair that he sat in that presidential box at Ford's Theater is now, well, the answer is Dearborn, Michigan, at the Henry Ford Museum. And we're headed that way right now. You can see the image on the wall of John Wilkes Booth shooting Abraham Lincoln in the back of the head, of course from behind, and there's the back of the chair right there. I'll read this placard out there for you. It says, upholstered seat rocking chair. Chair made 1855 to 1865. This is the actual chair in which President Lincoln was assassinated on April 14, 1865. It was originally located in the President's Special Box in Ford's Theater, Washington, D.C. Mourning the President. News of Lincoln's death spread. Many Americans wept with shock and anguish. After 4 long years of war, how could such a terrible thing happen? Tens of thousands of people lined up to pay their last respects, including many former slaves who considered Lincoln their savior. Now let's move around to see the front of the chair, where the great emancipator sat that fateful night. American icon of change, Abraham Lincoln's death in the pursuit of liberty. Ironically, though President Lincoln was assassinated in this chair, it now represents the life of this extraordinary individual and his complete devotion to the pursuit of America's founding principles. It was a Good Friday, April 14, 1865, while Lincoln watched the comedy Our American Cousin from his box, that John Wilkes Booth snuck up behind him and shot him in the back of the head, while he sat in this exact chair. They have obviously put these curtains up to give it a bit of a Ford Theater feel. Wow, it's really incredible. Now we will move on to some pieces owned by George Washington during his time fighting in the Revolutionary War.
Look at this. Folding camp bed, 1775 to 1780, used by George Washington. During the war.
And over here is George Washington's camp chest during the war. And this is a Supreme Court or Speaker's chair from 1790 to 1795. Finally, let's move on to the Henry Ford Museum's presidential car collection. Starting with Franklin Delano Roosevelt's Sunshine Special, a 1939 Ford Lincoln Model K, a V12 powered four-door convertible that was used by both FDR and Harry Truman.
Delano Roosevelt's Sunshine Special 1939 Lincoln, used from 1939 to 1915, the first car expressly designed and built for a president. The White House sent 5 pages of special instructions with the order for this new presidential vehicle. The World War was looming, and added security was crucial. Even more security features were added in 1942 after Pearl Harbor was bombed and the United States entered World War II. Other features of this custom-made car made it easier to lift President Roosevelt in and out since his legs had become paralyzed from the fearsome and incurable disease of polio. Despite these hardships, President Roosevelt enjoyed riding in public, and the top of this Sunshine Special convertible was often down as he greeted crowds.
Next up is Dwight D. Eisenhower's 1950 Ford Lincoln, known as the Bubble Top.
Bubble up top here. It's only part way. This is Dwight D. Eisenhower's Bubble Top 1950 Lincoln, used from 1950 to 1967. That's a lot of years of use. A stylish convertible to see and be seen in. It was a new era, and the old fleet of presidential cars was looking decidedly out of date. President Truman first rode this flashy convertible after it was delivered to the White House, along with 9 closed limousines in 1950. President Eisenhower later had the car fitted out with a removable plexiglass top that allowed him to see and be seen even in bad weather. This bubble top soon became the name for the whole car. The bubble top.
Next up is perhaps one of the most infamous cars ever, because of the unfortunate, tragic event that is associated with it. This is the 1961 Lincoln that John F. Kennedy was riding in the back seat of with his wife Jacqueline on November 22, 1963 in Dallas, Texas, when Lee Harvey Oswald shot and killed him.
This one is especially powerful. Kennedy's 1961 Lincoln, used from 1961 to 1977, which is surprising me they would keep using it after that. This is the car Kennedy was assassinated in. The top down. You can see him there in it.
Another really sad moment in history that really, from everything I've read and heard, just like Lincoln's assassination, really brought the country down to its knees, and everyone just mourned. And it really changed the course of this country's history.
So he was sitting in the back right seat. Back here. Crazy, certainly is tragic.
And finally, Ronald Reagan's 1972 Lincoln.
This one is Ronald Reagan's 1972 Lincoln, used from 1972 to 1992. Protecting the president gets serious. This limousine first used by President Nixon, provided refuge for President Reagan in 1981 after he was shot by would-be assassin John Hinckley. Like all presidential cars, after President Kennedy's assassination, it is a completely armored closed door with a permanent roof and bulletproof glass. But, in a concession to the president's desire to be seen, a sunroof panel can be opened for two people to stand up with their upper bodies outside the car. Bad idea to me. So this is the car they rushed Reagan into when he was shot in 1981. Right in front of the Kennedy car. That is a pretty impressive collection of presidential cars there.